going to here?
That was What the Rocks Don't Know by Willi Carlisle. He is joining us today along with myself and Garrett. And that's a video, one of the first ones that I had discovered of Willi from Western as Fuck. Really good station on YouTube. They work with a lot of artists in our field, but that video is very special because Willi is on like a shoe shine stand, rocking back and forth, playing what I believe to be as spoons. And it
well, that's a common misconception, Mike, is that they're actually bones. And it's not a shoe shine stand. It's a seat at like an Elks Lodge. It's either an Elks Lodge or a Moose Club or a one of those like secret societies that old men get drunk at.
Yeah, right.
I wish somebody's going to be like, oh, it's this kind of club. Who's in it? But they're just trying to be an elevated drinking club. But
yeah, like the Legion.
They're like these are wood ones. All my cow bones broke, so you can kind of tell that these are wood sounding. But I don't have enough money to kill a cow to get just the bones out of the wood bones out of it.
Right.
But you kind of clack them together, and they're a little like spoons. But spoons you have to do like on the knees.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bones you can kind of do in the middle of the air.
Nice.
So what you're telling me is I messed up the shoe shine stand and I messed up the bones.
And the bones.
So I just totally ruined the intro. So I'm sorry.
I'll give you another shot if you want.
Nope. No redos. We are
redos.
on an authentic podcast. And there are no redos.
One take, everybody knows the rules.
0 for 2. All right, moving on.
Yeah, it's 0 for 2. Good start, everybody.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, thanks for doing
thank
it,
you
man.
for coming on.
Despite all the silliness, thanks for joining us. I can't promise that there will be no more silliness.
That's okay. I'm ready.
It's only natural based off of the DM that my buddy first sent you when I gave him my phone at 2 a.m. on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
So
that turns out that wasn't
what
Mike.
happened. So to provide context, I get a lot of strange DMs, but I got one of the. I don't know what was that DM, Mike.
I would not like to necessarily discuss all the context of that DM, but essentially how it unfolded is my buddy Sam, who shares a lot of the same musical tastes. We were watching your videos late at night, and one in particular, and he's like, "You should get him on." And I was like, "Do you want to send him a message?" And I gave him my phone, and he sent you one.
I mean, it was just a regular. So the song in question is about cheap cocaine, and I get a lot of, as a result of that being, I'm a multifaceted individual, right? We all contain multitudes, right? We're made of stars. We're big people. Right. But this one song that I wrote about drugs causes strangers on the internet to send me a lot of pictures of themselves doing drugs. And now that's okay with me. But I think that, and your friend was actually really quite nice in this direct message and slipping into my DMs, because he was just like, essentially like, "Hey man, it's a good song," as opposed to like sending me pictures of themselves doing drugs, and then it's like, you should listen more closely to the song. It's not about loving doing drugs. It's about bad cocaine that you get from a buddy, and then you sleep on the floor of a punk house somewhere in God knows where, Illinois, and you talk to a bunch of kids with face tattoos and try to get out of there, but you end up getting your ass kicked at your own punk rock concert. So it's not a song glorifying the situation, although I guess I can see why it would seem that way.
Right. That's good. So everybody listening out there, stop sending Willi pictures of you doing blow.
Right.
Or maybe just don't do blow in the first place. That would actually be my advice there.
I mean, do what you please, and thanks for the love. I get worried about people with substance abuse problems, just because it's, you guys are in the music biz, how easy it is to lose a friend to it, where the fun tips over, you know what I mean, immediately. And this, you feel it happen at parties, you feel it happen all the time when you're like somehow at around 2 a.m., which is a good hour for me, you watch a couple people that you love tip over into the, oh, I need this territory, away from the, I love this territory, but I need this. So you got to be careful about that stuff.
It's true. It's true. Wise
Absolutely.
Words. Wise
Yes.
words. But let's talk take a bit more about that first song that we played, What the Rocks Don't Know, because that one is off of your 2018 record, I believe, which was To Tell You the Truth.
Yeah.
Am I correct? Yeah, and like that was the first one that I seen, like when I first came across your music, was that song. And yeah, obviously a different sound with that one compared on YouTube compared to the studio version, but I guess how did that one kind of come to be, and how did you end up just playing that one with the Bones?
Ever since I was hitchhiking around the US, I've been singing that versions of that song to myself. And so I got into the studio and was like, I have this song that's only existed in my head. It's got about 30 verses or something. I used to write a verse every time I left town just for fun. And then I'd sing as many of them as I could. And then I'd keep track of them. I'd lose track of them. I always like to do stuff orally, vernacularly, like try to, and I'm into memory. I'm into trying to remember as much as I can, especially of songs and stuff. So, and then I was like, okay, in the studio, let's just sing whatever version of this comes to my mind right now, whichever verses come at me. And I did it. And then the studio technician, Eric Wittens over at Homestead Recording in Fayetteville, Arkansas, was like, hey, see that weird foot thing that you're doing? Why don't you put that in there too? Because I did I tapped my feet in a kind of rhythmic way. And so I did it. And then like a month later, I was roaming around. It had already been recorded, and I just started playing harmonica to it. And then the Bones came in later. So I just kind of kept adding stuff. It was like, as soon as it wasn't a 30-verse song or 35 friggin' verses, and I could do a 5-minute version of it, it's like, okay, let's start making it cool again. So, the harmonica bit, I can do the harmonica bit better now than I used to be able to do it. I can do it. I can do it better than I used to be able to on the Western AF video, just because practice and so on. But to me, those things have a true evolution where, you're never presenting the finished version of anything. It's just a moment in time. There's some pressure with music to do everything perfectly, but I'm the kind of person that writes 35 verses and then pares it down to 5 almost by accident,
That's cool. It's a really cool way to approach like creating when you're actually in the studio getting ready to present that song, because like you said, that's often, that's going to be the first place people's minds go when they hear that song. If not for the Western AF video, that would be the first place that their minds would go. Like if you think of any other artist who maybe didn't have a Western AF video, and it's just like, when they go to see somebody play live, they expect to hear at least a close version of whatever they are familiar with.
And what's funny, man, is that the other verses that didn't get sung, the maybe 6 or 8 minutes of other verses that didn't get sung, I can't remember half of them now. I can still do, if you get me plastered enough, I can still do a lot of them. But it's been long enough now that some of that has gone away, and I've gotten a little less rough over the years. I guess it's just been 3 years ago now, but I do a lot more conventional practicing now, in part because there's less time on the road, less time to yourself, and I like to get down on every angle of it. Once I get the chance. There's kind of 2 versions for me. There's write it 7 times and see which one sticks, and then write it perfectly once. Those are kind of my 2 ways of doing it.
That's interesting. I mean, I guess that's,
Yeah.
I never really thought of that type of thing is because I mean that there's two sides to that coin too, because a lot of people go to see live music hoping that they hear a different version of what they've already, you know, the perceived
Yeah.
song that they have in their head. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I really I hope that it is that way forever, because to me, I don't know how much you guys love records, but I'm guessing
Yeah.
that you guys love records, and
Yeah.
you can only get 50 minutes before you start to degrade on a record, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So to me, there's all this extra stuff that's going to fall to the floor, just like these delicious scraps from the meal that you're cooking. And I want all that stuff, you know, especially because the live version, if the pedal steel player sees people are dancing, he's going to take that extra solo. You know, it's
Yeah.
not going to be the 2-minute Haggard, like this is not going to be the 2-minute Haggard song that
Yeah.
is like a perfect song, except maybe you could add a bunch of badass stuff to it live anytime you felt like it. I always want to, and because I'm one man, I think the best way to do that's always with like, here's a bunch of extra verses. Some of them are going to be stupid, but some of them are going to make you chuckle.
That's good. They're going to be fun. Yeah.
And about 1,000 folk songs. I was going through a song list. I used to know something like 300 folk songs off the top of my head.
Wow.
It's gone away some with COVID, but I used to remember a lot of songs.
Yeah. I mean, with how accessible songs are nowadays with streaming and whatnot, you definitely know that people are, you know, going back, listening to a song over and over and over. They can consume a song so many times and so easily compared to, you know, back in the day, that now, like you said, I hope that that desire to hear something new with live music. I assume that's kind of strengthened the desire to hear something new with live music. But
I hope so. I think of it as a different way of knowing, that like an oral way of like a live way of learning something or seeing something or experiencing it is a whole different way of understanding than a produced or, you know, manufactured or even repeated on demand version, right? The way people used to learn folk music was entirely orally, and that was always the tradition that I wanted. My first kind of experiences with folk music was that I could memorize it like poems, and that it would accompany like really common progressions. And those really common progressions would be, you know, would be delightful, and also be like every song in the world could fit inside this wonderful little box. Um, and all you had to do was sit down next to the right old person and collect this kind of whole understanding of the universe that happened through the, you know, dozens of songs that they could sing. That was what pretty much happened when I moved to Arkansas. Was I just started meeting old timers. I wanted to meet them, but it was amazing that they just kind of came out of the woodwork.
How old were you when you moved to Arkansas?
I was 21. So I went to college for poetry. I wanted to be a folk singer, but there's no. I needed to get away from home. I was kind of like a queer young man with trouble with kind of enough of a troubled home life that I needed to get away. So I did what a lot of middle class people do, is that I ran to a liberal arts college. And once I was there, I pretty much started playing banjos so much that I kept almost having to drop out. You know, like, just like I'd be getting on an Amtrak to go visit somebody and go to some festival and missing 6 weeks of class, and then coming back and being like, you know, coming back and sitting in my Walt Whitman class and being like, you guys don't know anything about what it is to live. You know, that's just kind of a little punk. I got in debt forever for it, but it gave me a nice understanding of not just poetry, but of an American canon of poetry and folk music that kind of blend freely together. And then I decided I wanted to go to Arkansas because they offered to let me teach for 4 years at the University of Arkansas.
Okay.
And because I was already doing that sort of thing, it was like, okay, I'll go get a master's degree and teach. But what I'm doing there is I'm learning songs from old folks. So I got down there, I started to play fiddle and banjo and everything. I started to play old time music. I started to call square dances and literally just try to apprentice under 3 or 4 people at a time. It was like, I'm gonna interview, I'm gonna record, I'm gonna keep writing, so it was more or less, there's a lot of different ways to get into it, but I think that my way was, I thought I wanted to be a fine artist, and then I kind of figured out pretty quick that that was bullshit for the rich kids. And then it was like, okay, let's go another direction. You know what I mean? Let's try to do the stuff that the non-rich kids do.
Right.
Interesting. One thing I want to talk about is that, I mean, your Arkansas posse down there with seems like there's a lot of fun things going on with you and Nick Shoulders and Dylan Earl. And I guess just between you three, I mean, 3 of my favorite artists out there, and a lot of, I always spend a lot of time listening to you 3. And I don't know, it seems like you guys collaborate a lot. You're all pretty tight with the Western as Fuck guys. And I don't know, it's just how'd that like bond come to be between you 3?
Well, so it was that we were all working hard, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, in this business, we get our connections through mutual love and needing excuses to hang out. So back when Nick Shoulders was still playing in punk bands, I would like come from the class I was teaching, get high in the building outside of the class I was teaching, and then go down to a punk house to play banjo tunes to open for bands like Nick's old punk bands. And
That's awesome.
Nick was like from Arkansas way back. So
Yeah.
he and I had a lot of interests in common. We pretty much had read the same books on it. Like, it was just major difference was that Nick had learned to rebel from it, and I was rebelling from something totally different. You know, I'd been in punk bands. I was already kind of like, I was through that phase because the old time music presented something brand new to me. Whereas to Nick, he grew up around it. So it was like, there's a really complicated thing when you inherit that stuff. And it's, you know, there's a lot of problems in white American hillbilly music, dealing with race and class that if you're a young man or seem better to avoid. But we always really had a lot of respect for each other, even though we didn't quite run in the same circles. And as soon as he started playing country music, it was like, oh, okay, we're gonna be buds. And even when he wasn't playing country music, we just didn't have any excuses to hang out. Dylan, on the other hand, I had known for a long time. I first saw him open for Daniel Romano. My very first concert, and Daniel's from Canada, so you may know him, Garrett.
I'm not sure.
Was a country singer from Canada, and you know, I'm sorry to put a pan Canadian thing on you. I don't mean it.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. It's welcome.
If somebody said
it's
well,
true,
they're from Los Angeles, you ought to know who they are, I probably would be like, all right.
Now all Canadians do know all Canadians, so that is true.
Yeah. For the most part. No.
Well, sorry,
I saw Dylan open Dylan was on tour with Daniel Romano, and it was my first gig ever playing my own songs, actually.
Wow.
And I was playing an electric guitar. It was the only gig I've ever played on an electric guitar. And I was like, who's the hell is this handsome baritone? And it was Dylan Earl. And before long, we just started doing tours together. It was just easy. Dylan's a honky tonk band. It's really cool to have a folk singer open for him because I'm flexible. I show up, I play 4 or 5 instruments. I put on a big show. I throw my hat in the air, spin banjos around. And so, I'm not afraid to do that in mixed settings. You know what I mean? I'll do it in a punk rock club. I'll do it in an arts center. I'll do it in a public library. I'll clean it up for kids. I'll do it for, you know, I think of folk singing as public service to a certain degree. That sounds pretty pretentious, but Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie invented the model for this, you know, and they wanted to do the right thing with it. So I like to think of myself as pretty flexible in that regard. And Dylan was just like, hey man, I see that you're flexible in this regard. Let's start touring. So um, as soon as we met the Western AF guys, I met Mike from Western AF. It was just like, we got to plug in your Arkansas buddies. And to be honest, the musical riches in Arkansas are very, very deep. And it's because it's still one of the American backwaters. It's still one of the places where you can hear Cajun music at the farmer's market, and then also hear blues music at a festival, and still hear old time music that people learn from their great grandparents. And I think that's because it's right up against what was formerly Indian territory in Oklahoma. So it's one of the last places in the Homestead Act that you could get cheap, almost useless land. There's also, it's not exploitable. The Arkansas Ozarks are not exploitable at all. They don't have any value commercially. So that sets up Arkansas to be a really fine place for music. And it's also, Little Rock is just as good as Memphis. It just didn't have the powerful radio stations.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I definitely want to talk a bit about your folk acts that because you've spent a lot of time just going around like touring solo as a folk singer, which I don't know. We can talk about this too, but the difference between folk music and country music, if there is one, I think they're kind of one and the same. But like you talked about, your ability to fit in with a lot of different crowds, whether you be opening for them or however it ends up working musically, you're able to kind of adapt to your situation. And I think like just when you were saying that, I was kind of just thinking about that must come from getting used to putting on a show, and that sense of showmanship just has to come natural when you are almost a one-man band type deal.
Yeah, well, so folk and country, I don't it's really when that Ken Burns documentary came out, it was like, oh man, that's great, we can skip over some of this now. I think it's really cool that it's kind of entering people's consciousness that folk music and country music are one and the same, right? But I think it's worth saying that country music is a little bit of a marketing scheme invented by record companies where they sell nostalgia back to people. And folk music has that same kind of trap inside of it. It's not a bad trap. I don't mean like oh God, you're doing something wrong. I mean like it's just a reason why our ears perk up, right? Some sense of home, some sense of the past, some sense of where we've been before. But something that I've always wanted to do is to be a little bit Pan-American in it, is to explore where the bodies are buried, to look into the kind of bloody and or forgotten backwaters of folk, country, hillbilly, and then the various ethnically named music. Like, why do we call Cajun music instead of music of Louisiana, or a certain style of country music as played in southern Louisiana, right? Yeah. We do the same thing with conjunto and Tejano music that just never managed to integrate, right? And all kinds of different music. We do that too. Polish music, for example. There were Polish country bands, but they didn't find, none of them got big, right?
Well, I would absolutely. I think you're kind of on track there. Like in my mind, something that I never really thought about until we spoke with Dom Flemons a few weeks ago, and he kind of planted that seed in my brain now, where it's like country music, like you said, almost seems like it's a little more commercial. Like obviously it's more commercialized, but that nostalgia that they're selling back to you is a little more rooted in, just the history of like commercialization almost. And, folk music seems to have this thing where it's a lot more rooted in a regional sound, which is kind of exactly what you said, but it's just, that's something that's kind of been a recurring thought in my head since we had that conversation that I never really thought of before, but it is super regionally influenced.
Yeah, trying to do it on a human scale, because regions exist on human scales, right? A single fiddle player in southern Missouri, and of course I've got my own names in mind, but can influence 30 fiddle players that play stuff somewhat similar to him.
Yeah.
And to me, when we talk about like ways of knowing, what this implies is that there's a bioregional rootedness that lets us sing out into our landscapes and let those landscapes echo back in meaningful ways that can move past mere nostalgia or mere commercialization, but also can integrate and swallow up all those influences as it wants to. So um, it's a little bit like, I think that folk, and to a great extent country music in its regional forms, is provides a meaningful alternative to late capitalism's like apocalyptic end run of monolithic boring music.
Gotcha.
You lost me on some of the big vocab, but I get what you're saying, I think.
Well, it's funny because we've talked plenty with plenty of artists, especially from the Kentucky region. Some of those artists can make me feel attached to, up until October, a place that I had never been before. And it's the same thing with when I listen to stuff that's really obviously, Texan or Oklahoman with Red Dirt type of thing. That makes sense. And even you guys, that was something I was going to mention, like this Arkansas Ozarks, like Nick in particular, his sound is so like attached to what seems like attached to a place and tradition and the outdoors and kind of a region, and that it makes listening to that music can make me feel attached to that, even if I've never been there in my life.
Yeah, I think that there's like a fair bit of like filling in the blank that the human spirit can do about that stuff. Yeah. And the best part about folk and country music is the three chords and the truth aspect to me, because of the infinite variations inside of that stuff, where it just has to be a little different to make that happen in every place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm thinking shift of gears, and I heard you were wanting to play us a song here on the show. If now might be a good time, just time-wise, here to transition to that. So if you want to talk about what you're gonna play.
In fact, it's perfect because
you can take the headphones out if they're going to be in your way too.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. Well, maybe I'll keep them in. It's okay. This is perfect because we're talking about nostalgia, and I've been trying. This is a song that's not going to be on the new record, but I recorded with Western AF anyways because I thought it was a good song, and I don't have to attach everything to everything else. Not everything has to be of a piece, but this is a little piece of nostalgia. I had never heard The Red-Headed Stranger in its entirety up until about a year ago. I'd heard little bits and pieces of it. And my baby that I live with can sing it almost all the way through. But just when she's had a lot to drink. So this is, it needs no other explanation. This is, my baby sings all of The Red-Headed Stranger sometimes when she's too drunk to cry. And it is a piece of nostalgia. Well, I fell in with a Stone County girl, rough as the country is wide, wild as the bramble or the blackberry tangle, and sweet as the berries thereby. Now the soldier's got his rifle, the hangman has his noose. My love has got her overalls and a tongue so sharp and loose. She's 3 beers deep in the throes of that poetry, making me vow she can't keep. Says she's unhappy, so damn unhappy in love, but she can't tell me why. My baby sings all of the red-headed stranger, sometimes when she's too drunk to cry. There's the quiet drum shuffle of the taps of her toes and the peace of a cold, lonesome place. Sober, she might not remember the words. The Sunday's reserved for amazing grace. Now the preacher has his Bible, and the carpenter his tools. My love has got the 6-string box and the words so soft and cool. She's 6 beers deep in the throes of that poetry, making me vow she can't keep. Says she's unhappy, so damn unhappy in love, but she can't tell me why. My baby sings all of the red-headed stranger, sometimes when she's too drunk to cry. My baby sings all of the red-headed stranger, sometimes when she's too drunk to cry. There it is.
And you lost the hat at the end.
I always do. Getting real good at grabbing it as it comes on.
that was fantastic. That was
yes,
amazing.
Very great. How long did you debate on the title of that song? Like, did you go back and forth on like, no, that's too long, or like, no, let's just throw it all in there? Like, was that like, I'm just curious.
You know, I figured if it appeared on the back of a record that I would actually just put all of the Red-Headed Stranger.
Okay.
But there's something to me about the cadence of that, but also the fact that if you can say a sentence and have a song not need any more explanation, well then by God, why not make that the title?
Yeah. Hey, all right.
And so that was because I was able to write it mostly because I had heard that record a ton now. And it was like, I want to write a Willie Nelson imitation. Are you a real country singer if you've never written? You're like, if you've never been truly inspired, you know?
Yeah.
So I guess I debated none about the title. Yeah, it's like live with it. And if that someday makes it less popular, I'll be like, you know, you guys weren't going to like me anyways.
They just don't understand. One of those things. That was really good. Thanks for playing one. We appreciate it. It's always fun when we get great artists to do that.
Like I said, it won't be on the record. It's not, but it'll be out in one way or another. People be able to hear it, and it just doesn't quite fit on the project I'm working on now.
I get that. Speaking of that, let's talk about that project, and because we talked about it a little bit before, right? But not yet on.
Before we started recording, we talked about it.
Like, wait a minute, was it on here? Was it before?
Nope.
It was before. So really unique, kind of community fan-based backing to the album that went very successful. And it was on Indiegogo was kind of the platform that it was launched on. Yeah.
I don't love using a platform. You know, I don't love doesn't everybody want to just be an artist that gets to say, hey guys, I'm making a new record. Everybody pre-order it. but I used a platform for this. But the thing is it went better than I ever thought it would, which it got funded in a day. And it wasn't donations either. It was just people ordering the record. So got about 300 people that want vinyls and t-shirts and stuff like that. By the time this hits, they'll still be available. So I plan to do a 60-day fundraiser, and it turned into a 24-hour fundraiser. And I'm like overwhelmed and delighted that so it's mostly strangers. I got a call from my mom, and she was like, well, I don't know if we're gonna buy a record. Seems like you don't need our help. So, but I'm really pleased with the project. It's called Peculiar Missouri, tentatively. I got to let myself change it if I want, but I'm calling it 12 folk songs and tall tales and cowboy ballads. It's a lot of, it's probably about 30% folk songs, 30% originals, and about 30% talking blues.
Nice. Very nice.
What about the other 10%?
The other 10% is quiet.
Surprise. For me.
The other 10% is the quiet hiss of the needle in between
there
songs.
You go. All right.
There it is.
Didn't I tell you I dropped out of school because I played banjo too much?
Yeah.
I'm a math teacher, man. I gotta
really?
wonder about the other 10%. Yeah.
Are you really a math teacher?
Yeah, seventh grade too. We're about to get into percents too. So,
oh yeah.
Just in case a student is listening, I have to, show them that I do know that there is 100%.
Yeah.
Do your
not too
kids
many
know
seventh
that
graders
you
really
do this podcast?
Oh hell no.
No.
They don't. Folk in like Americana, they don't know what the hell this is. They wouldn't care if they knew. But also, I like to cuss on these shows, so
right. Yeah,
I'll let them. I'll let them not.
Well, it's good that they don't know. I do have a couple students, like guitar students that I've taken over COVID, that are like gonna be hotter ragtime pickers than like anybody I've ever met. And it's because they've harnessed the power of the internet for their love of country music, and they'll know more stuff than I do. But when they're not into it, talking to Gen Z is like, whoa, you guys are really not into this.
Yeah, they're
like
interesting.
if like outside of class time, if a conversation strikes with somebody who I'll play this kind of music, while they're working independently a lot. And if somebody ever asks me, then I'll talk to them about it. But I don't really tell them like that I do all this with it. But I'll, be like, hey, here's the rabbit hole. Go down it if you want. Mm-hmm. But that's pretty much the extent of it. But yeah, because I wish when I was at their age, man, if somebody showed me that, that would have been great. But I had to figure it out by myself. Pretty much late college that it even existed. But yeah.
There's a degree to which it's like everything you can get, trying to get your dirty paws on everything was a good experience of the early internet, right?
Yeah.
Being like, I'm going to be able, for the first time ever, I can get everything, and it's just going to take a week. Like, but that week is going to be like in there getting viruses and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I wanted to ask you, so you're kind of, I mean, we talked a bit about the folk background, and you traveled around doing things like fringe festivals. That's how you've been to Edmonton, which is where I'm at, multiple times. How many, maybe, I guess my question, if there is a question here, is like, how many instruments do you play, and how do you incorporate all of that into your show individually if you are just a one-man band type of a situation? Or how often do you do that, I guess?
Well, so it comes and goes. I love doing one-man stuff. What I like to do is I like to try to write my own stuff that's based around the mentorships and apprenticeships that I've done. So it's like one of the reasons I do some of the fast talking stuff is because I learned how to do auctioneer calling and square dance calling for people. So it's like,
That's super cool.
you know, what are your abilities? What do you want to apply right now?
Yeah.
Right. So, so it tends to be, I like to do a little bit of everything, in part because of variety, but also because I think a little bit goes a long way. I really do believe in using instruments there are, it's like Chris Steele can get anything he wants out of the mandolin. Can he make me care though? I want to be able to do a very simple thing on many instruments that can try to make you care. And so just use the instrument for its abilities. And those abilities shift according to needs and audiences. I think if it's a rowdy bar crowd, I tend to change instruments to hold attention. If it's a silent listening crowd that only want originals, well, then I'll go into the back catalog and have fun with it. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that I've always wanted to do the Mike Seeger, not necessarily Pete Seeger, but Mike Seeger model, where you learned from a lot of different people, and you had a lot of different bits of wisdom to share from those people. That coupled with wanting to write my own songs is a kind of a motley mixture that will be unpacking until the day I die, I hope.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious so you mentioned like the rowdy bar show where you'll switch up instruments to keep attention, and the silent where they're listening to the words and originals. What kind of show do you prefer to play?
I mean, it's the year of COVID. I prefer any show at all.
Yeah,
true. There's a degree to which here's a real thing is that folk music sometimes is just pretentious. It's like, oh, well, we know about how this music is, we know the history behind all of it or whatnot. And country music tends to blend very freely, where somebody who's real into Haggard might also be into Florida Georgia Line, right? So I think I want to have it. It's not so much that I prefer one show over the other. It's that I want to try to give the gift regardless, because I actually like all that stuff. I like knowing the history, but I also actually think that like pop country radio is better than a guilty pleasure, but that it's kind of badass that something can be so totally Pan-American, so totally constantly pandering. Like,
pandering is the word.
Yeah.
And
I'm guessing you guys aren't really all that into pop country.
No, not too much. I mean, I don't know. I think it's really fucking corny most of the time, and it's really repetitive, and it's really oftentimes, it's cultural appropriation in a lot of ways, to like, hip hop music and African American culture in America a lot of time. And it's all, and I mean that
and it panders to
it's just
suburban,
it's just not
white America.
It panders to a crowd.
You're looking
like a fictional, not a fictional, but a crowd that is, I think, smarter than what corporate radio stations maybe believe them to be, I guess, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah,
there's a lot wrong with it. There's a lot wrong.
What I like about it is that it is a foil for all of this stuff, right? So and so just like you guys had just did there, right? I don't want to judge the audience, but I want to give something tasty to that crew, right? And if that's what I know people expect, well then, by God, I will be your huckleberry, because I have the advantage of being steeped in a number of different ways of thinking about this stuff, and I'm really And so, because there also is not a pop country listener that doesn't perk up when they hear a certain Woody Guthrie materials or licks. It's all available, and things from the Grand Ole Opry are still in people's ears. Bluegrass sounds still appear in that. So I guess even pop country is an invitation into what I'm doing. I just might change the way I'm curating the exhibit a little bit. You know, I'm also, you know, I'm not necessarily, there's just different crowds for different things. And I don't want to pretend to do it all, but for God's sake, I got into this because I can't focus on one damn thing.
I think what you said there's important too, though, for people who kind of think the way we do. If there's somebody who's never listened to country music before, and then the first thing that they hear is pop country, because there is some poppy sound, you know, more pop sounding country music that is perfectly fine in my book. It's just because it's, you know, maybe the songwriting's still there, you know, maybe they are incorporating some pedal steel or fiddle or banjo or whatever it may be, and it's got that little bit of substance there that maybe they will go down the rabbit hole and then find their way into, you know, roots, Americana, folk, and, you know, different kinds of country music that they may not hear on the radio, you know. So, you know, you can't. I think if you would have asked me a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, I would have said, no, it was all bad. There's no use for it. But I think that's totally, you know, my mind's totally changed about that type of thing over the course of doing this podcast and talking to people such as yourself, who oftentimes, you know, I think when Mike and I think Mike would agree with me here, but I'm going to say, at least for me, when we started, I was kind of under the impression that artists such as yourself were kind of bitter about, you know, corporate country radio and what the things that are getting attention there. And I think some people can be bitter about it, but once you kind of start to find out that a lot of artists actually just don't care about what they're doing, and they're just so focused and care about making their own art and finding their own audience, that you know, that kind of just goes away from me. And I'm not an artist, so it's easy for me to sit and, you know, speculate as a listener, but that's, my mind's definitely changed about it over time.
You know, I'll tell you what does concern me, and it's that doors close in like doors close to individual thinking. And like the metaphor that I always choose for it is that we live in a world where we don't get to decide whether we know the McRib is back. Like I have to have a little piece of brain space taken up by that, and that brain space is better spent elsewhere. And this is one reason to get lost in an really archive or get lost somewhere else, is because you want to take a little bit of this little tiny thing that lives between your ears, you know, your freedom, and put it on your own terms. And especially if you can couch those terms in your family, in the people that you love, like, and in the way that they interact with the world, not just singing, but growing things. Like I think of it a little bit like local food. Is that it's really hard. I'm pissed at, don't get me wrong, I'm pissed at Bayer Monsanto, right? But that doesn't mean I'm not eating a corn dog, right? I still get in the truck and hear the country music.
Gotcha.
But that doesn't mean I also don't want to grow something of my own in my backyard.
Right. Makes sense. Definitely makes sense.
For the record, I am less open-minded than Garrett on the mainstream country issue. I think there are songs out there that should never be heard by anybody. Like that song that's like, my truck's louder than your truck and my sister's hotter than your sister. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, no one needs to listen to that. Like, like I would just love to swap all the radio time that song's been played and just see the faces and throw van life up there and give that spot and just see what people do. Could you imagine?
Make the call, man. Yeah, I mean, I'm.
Yeah, I'll call up the fellas in Nashville.
You know, it's really. I don't blame you. What I'm concerned with, I guess what I'm always worried about is something that's so delicate that it can't even really deal with monoliths. In fact, I wish I had my fiddle tuned up here, because some of the stuff that I have learned that I treasure the most is so simple you almost couldn't call it music by contemporary standards. It's more like a style. Here, let me get my banjo here for a second.
Yeah.
So, like, I got to do a little tuning on it. I think I have it in a weird tuning, but. This sort of knockdown banjo style was taught to me by a guy named Bill Conley out of Missouri. And it's representative of a West Kentucky knockdown style, but it's so damn simple. Every song is in this position. It goes back to the 18th century or the 19th century. So that particular variation of clawhammer banjo has its own story, its own regionality, its own sort of families that practiced it. But it, as a method of approaching the banjo, is only using the first 2 frets. There's not, it would be very difficult to call that like, especially because every tune, or about half the tunes, are played in that exact position. You'd be a little bit hard pressed to be like, oh, well, that's like genius. It has verisimilitude. It's applicable in a bunch of scenarios. It would interest Chris Thiele for 30 seconds. But you can say that locked inside those 2 damn frets are so many. There's another version of 3 chords in the truth and Dance Like Your Grandmother Is Proud of You, that you can hang your hat on. But it's delicate, right? It's little. It's not the same as it almost. I can't even be mad about pop country when I'm thinking about all the cool stuff in the first 2 frets. Yeah, it's just that stuff just makes me.
That's
mad.
awesome.
I like that.
And the Honky Tonk Badonkadonk still might be one of the best songs ever written. I'm determined.
That honky tonk, badonk.
And I've got friends in low places as also. I mean, that'll never come on, and I'll be upset about it.
Yeah, I love Friends in Low Places.
Oh, yeah.
However, we might have to agree to disagree on the honky tonk badonkadonk.
That's okay. I'm willing to die there. That's okay. You leave me hanging.
Hate to see her go, but you love to watch her leave with that honky tonk, badonk. Yeah.
I think this is maybe a good spot to
Yes.
Do our rapid fires.
I agree.
We did not.
Totally
We didn't.
agree.
We didn't. I didn't tell them about this at all. So.
Oh, that's all right. No,
we're
no,
gonna
I
ask
think I
you.
know what those 2 words mean. I think.
Yeah, we're gonna ask you. We're gonna ask you some silly shit.
All right.
If you're ready. Do you want to start, Mike? You want me to start?
Yeah, sure. If you were to get arrested today, what would all your friends assume you got arrested for?
Contraband. Over the border contraband.
Oh, no brainer.
Of course.
There's I shouldn't elaborate, should I? They're rapid fire.
You can elaborate. We allow that.
Elaborate all you
Yeah.
want.
So
It's not that rapid.
I got detained at the border of Canada because I had a human leg bone on my dashboard as this like kind of macabre memento mori I collected from a buddy who did a piece of performance art about it, and then gave me this human leg of a decommissioned medical skeleton. So the cops loved to hear that because they understood all that.
Right.
But they detained me for a long time because they were like, why the hell do you have this human leg in your van? And then I had this long explanation involving performance art. And didn't make it to my gig in Vancouver, but in time. But once I got to Vancouver, I opened my glove compartment, and like a ton of weed just fell to the ground. And they didn't find the weed, but they found
They're
the
too
human
worried
leg,
about
so.
the bone to find the weed.
Right.
The perfect
border
decoy.
contraband is the short answer.
Oh man.
Oh, that's great.
That's good stuff. All right. Give me. All right. Here's a kind of related one. Give me an unwritten rule of the road.
Yeah, that's a tough one. An unwritten rule of the road is, I guess it's don't hog the aux cable. It's an easy one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Be kind. Share.
Sharing is caring.
Caring is caring. Absolutely.
If somebody wrote a book about your life, what would the title be?
Oh,
It's not a very rapid question. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I just don't have a very rapid answer. I'm really pleased with my album title, and so I'll say the album title, which is Peculiar Missouri. And I think that sums it up nicely because it's a weird, tiny little town in Missouri. And I really like tiny little towns. And I'm also weird.
And peculiar is like a, yeah. That makes sense.
All right. What's the grossest thing that you've seen someone eat like it was totally normal? I hope the answer isn't also human leg bone.
No. I really have experienced bad poutine before, and I don't know, like I've had good poutine, and it may just be that we were talking about Alberta a little bit,
right.
but bad gas station poutine is like, that's the lowest of the low.
I didn't even, dude, I didn't even know you could get poutine in gas stations. I've never seen it, but I do believe you.
I may be mistaken, but so y'all do this thing with gravy. I don't understand. I see. Mike is nodding here, which is all brown. It's all brown packet gravy. It's not cream gravy. So I get all excited when I hear gravy. That's going to be gravy on it, and then it's brown like Thanksgiving gravy, not like biscuit gravy.
Yeah.
So not like Southern biscuit gravy. So I would say poutine, but like, and maybe just bad poutine. Yeah.
Bad poutine is really bad. That's just like oil. Poutine's one of those things where it's like, if it's not, there's a there's no real middle ground there. It's like, this shit's either really, really good or it's really, really bad. And that's kind of the way it goes, but
interesting.
Good call. Yeah. Mike's
let's say if
thinking about poutine.
Yeah. If you won a $50 scratch off tomorrow, what are you spending it on?
Tomorrow I'm renting a DG diatonic button accordion so I can better record this conjunto number that I'm working on.
I have one lying around here somewhere.
It's DG?
I believe so.
Wow.
It's in this briefcase. I won't pull it out. Yes, it's underneath this desk here. I would pull it out and no, I won't. It's not mine. It's my roommate's. Because
I'm sitting here with a GC F, a GC, an AD, an E flat F, and I don't have the one key of accordion that I need for this one sort of cowboy song. I really want to make the record, and it's like not right. It's not like not having the right key of harmonica.
I did just get. That's what I got for my birthday. It was 4 new keys of harmonicas.
Nice.
How do you open this thing up?
You still digging for your?
You can go ahead.
For your recording. All right. Okay. Bacon or sausage with your eggs?
Sausage when in doubt. Sausage. But what I mean, it patties, not links. If we're going there.
Oh, okay. All right.
Where does it say the key at?
Is it button like this?
What's that?
Buttons like this?
Well, no. No, it's got keys on one end of it.
Oh, it's piano accordion.
Yeah.
Well, so for those of you that don't know, the accordion has a vast and varied history where one of them is like a dumb little huge harmonica and the other one's like a smart and elegant piano. And I play the dumb one.
And I play the
But
dominoes.
so did a lot of German and Polish immigrants, and not to mention that the kind of South American crossovers that happened in
Play that
in
thing,
the-
Mike. Sorry to
I have
interrupt.
no idea how to play this
I
thing.
was gonna say like
I don't even know if the key is supposed to go on the right side or the left. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's just a little taste for you folks at home.
there you go. Yeah. So for those of you not
I am
watching
open for
the,
hire.
for those of you listening to the audio version of this podcast, Willie was clearly the first one.
No. That last one you just heard was Willie.
Right.
I've been taking lessons over quarantine. That's been like my personal project is taking lessons with really good Mexican accordion players. It's been really like a huge pleasure. The language barrier is not as high as I thought it would be either.
Oh, nice.
That's handy. So I don't know if I did ask this earlier. We're done the rapid fires now. That was 3H, so you made her through that. But how many instruments do you play in total? How many could you just pick up right now? And
let's see, accordion, bones, harmonica, git, fiddle, banjo, fiddle. That's about it. I can't play any kind of bass. I'm actually not a great utility player. It's like you put me in a band and I'm a little like, well, I'm kind of limited to these keys because I play styles a lot more than I play. It's like you put a good country fiddle player in a scenario, they can hang. But I'm a little bit more like, well, I play a highly regional variety of Ozark style fiddle tunes. And then it's like, well, I play a certain variety of country straight harp. And it's like, well, I play a ragtime guitar along with some bluegrass flat picking. And then it's like, well, I play knockdown clawhammer banjo and a little bit of bluegrass banjo. Bluegrass banjo doesn't fit in with everything, right? Certainly doesn't fit in with it, most things. So I've never wanted to be master of none, but I just like so much American music that I get sidetracked all the time.
that'll happen. But still very impressive.
I wanted to be like
impressive.
John Hartford, too. Not the best player, but damn could he write, and he had a lot of good players around him.
Right, that makes sense. That makes sense. Shit, man. I don't know.
But
getting up there in time here now.
I got through my notes.
We've got. I guess why don't we take a minute? We'll plug the social medias and. Oh no! Wait. You know what? We gotta ask. We gotta ask. I gotta tack on one more rapid fire from somebody from our Patreon. Because I forgot about
Bonus rapid fire. What?
Bonus rapid fires. Yeah, you know that little little air horn thing.
I should do that on the harmonica.
Sure.
Or not the harmonica, the accordion.
Okay. All right. Okay. So she oh God. Okay. She sent 3. This is from, I'm gonna butcher the last name. Tiffany Padilla or Padilla. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name.
I would imagine Padilla.
Yeah, Padilla, I assume.
Yeah.
But thank you for the question and the questions. But I am just gonna pick one of them. And so this is from Tiffany, and she says, "Who would you want to play with in a duo? Could be someone dead or alive."
To be honest, I'm enjoying the hell out of playing with Nick Shoulders in duo settings when we get to hang out and pick together. But I'll pick somebody dead too. Also Jerron Paxton, I would love to play in a duo with. If you know Jerron, great blues player. Just so I can watch his left hand steal stuff.
Oh, there you go. That'd be good.
And he's
thinking.
a sweetheart. He is maybe the sweetest living man.
There it is. All right. Well, thanks, Tiffany, for that question. But like I said, we will we'll now plug in the social medias and anything you got coming up that you can, I guess, let everybody know about.
The album.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, of course,
the
album.
On Indiegogo, you just type my name, WILLICARLISLE. Hello, you're on Card Talk. And it's easy to find me, easy to find the record. You can listen on Spotify, and also on Bandcamp. I got cool T-shirts and stuff like that. Don't have any gigs coming up that aren't super private, but I am doing a run of private house concerts and stuff like that in pretty much all across the country next year. So drop a line. You want to hang out? I'm around.
Right on. There it is. All right. So, yeah, thanks everybody for tuning into the show. Before we let you go, we got kind of a pretty cool little surprise for you here at the end. We're going to play you for the people listening to the audio version of this podcast. We are going to play you the song from Willi's new music video. And obviously for the people watching this, you are going to watch and listen to it. So Willi, I don't know if you want to take a minute and introduce what these people are about to hear and maybe just talk a bit about it. And yeah,
it's a song from the new record called The Grand Design. I wrote it for a buddy who was thinking about ending his own life, and it's he's fine now, but there's something I wish I had said, and this is pretty much the song that tries to say what I wished I'd said to him.
Wow.
Very neat.
Oh, function as an introduction and a trigger warning. I wrote this for a friend of mine. We used to sit around and talk about the meaning of life and so on. He was going through hard times, and some friends went to go check up on him. And they started banging on his door, and he didn't answer, and they kept banging, and he kept not answering. It's kind of a song for that moment. It's called The Grand Design. All I asked of you is your better years. All I know how to do is waste them. We'll philosophize on the grand design and mourn all of creation, and rejoice 'cause we're sorry and we tried. I'll rejoice if you're more than just alive. Now let the gods that give the world its sins, let them lay their lights down low for you now. I know they said we'd meet in eternity, still I wait for you below somehow. Coming home, you should know I ain't the same. Coming home, forever changed. 'Cause there is evil enough in a half-full cup to tempt me towards the deep, dark find. When I believe in love and the things thereof, I know I feel you shine. I don't know, but I heard that there is more. I'm uneasy knocking on the door. 'Cause all I asked of you is your better years. All I know how to do is waste them. Now I laugh and cry at the grand design and mourn all of creation. Now I laugh
laugh and cry at the grand design and mourn all of creation.